probably the hardest class to start. I wanted to talk about a little bit of Rav Kook. Tomorrow night is the 90th Yortzeit. 90 years ago, Rav Kook passed away. To talk about Rav Kook is very difficult, as I said. It's a very unique personality. It's hard to limit the descriptions because the very essence of his being was so not limited, so all-inclusive. The vision, the Torah, the life level. There's giants of Torah, there's giants of the love of Am Yisrael, the love of Hashem, the love of the land of Israel. The people, again, rabbis that were halachic leaders, poskim, rabbinic leaders, wrote books, prose, Kabbalah. Rav Kook was this unique phenomenon of this all-encompassing poet, Kabbalah, Halacha, the revealed side of Torah, the inner side, the leadership. Again, the first chief rabbi. He was a rabbi in a few cities, communities in Europe, in Boysk, I don't know if in Poland anyway. Boysk and Zymel. No, it wasn't Poland, it was but later Lithuania, Latvia, today. And then he was invited to become the rabbi in Yafo, and then established the chief rabbinate in Yerushalayim, the first chief rabbi. Again, by the biographical date, so to speak, he was born in 1865, passed away, like I said, 90 years ago, 1935. Tomorrow night is the Yortzeit, 90 years. As we go on, we'll see maybe more. It's hard to, like I said, it's hard to describe him. The giants of the generation that spoke about him, about his prayer, one of them, Isra Zalman and Meltzer, one of the giants of the generation, Yerushalayim, much to his elder. He says, Halavai should only be that my prayer on Nilah, the final prayer on Yom Kippur, the height, the elevation, we get to levels and levels, Yom Kippur, and the prayer of Nilah at the end, he says, I wish that I can get to the level of my prayer of Nilah, should be like the prayer of Rav Kook with the same intensity and intention as Rav Kook, as a simple mincha prayer of the weekday mincha. And other giants, it's again, I don't want to get to stories and what Rabbi spoke about him. And it's this unique phenomenon, which again is a godsend, the time of history that we're in. The Jewish people are now returning after 2,000 years of being scattered, fractured, broken. Like it says in Yechezkel 37, the dry bones prophecy, scattered bones all over. And not just physical dispersion, but the Torah, when it's like you have a light that it goes through a prism, and the prism diffracts to different colors. When the neshama of the Jewish people, our divine life source, this white light, the divine light that comes through the Jewish people of the world, we're outside the land of Israel, this light is diffracted, it doesn't come through the broken vessel. In other words, it says in Yeshayahu 52, Noten neshama la'am aleha, I give the neshama to this people upon the land. This neshama, the spiritual life force, the Jewish people throughout history, we have one collective divine life force called Knesset Yisrael, the Shekhinah. That's revealed to the Jewish people in the land of Israel. When we're scattered, that neshama, like if the person, God forbid, these are different parts of the hospital, put a lung machine, kidney machine, separate. The neshama, the inner personality, that one unified life force, cannot be revealed. Now, different pieces. It's fractured into different pieces. So again, not just physically, with the Shema, this one divine light source in the exile is now fractured. The Jewish people, the Torah is now diversified into different aspects and different functions. There's Torah, the Halacha, the Kabbalah, this. It's all fractured. It's all pieced and broken. No longer has this, again, the full status and grandeur of the Jewish people living like a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, like it says before the Ten Commandments. You'll be unto me, Mamlechet Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. You'll be unto me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, and a nation that expresses godliness in this world and the spiritual content that comes through this people in the land to be a blessing to all. Like it says to the fathers, the nations of the world will be blessed through you. It's not for our benefit. God created this vehicle that brings, like the heart, brings life to all the limbs. But that's what Jews in Eretz Yisrael. When that's fractured, then that heart is, like I said, broken into pieces and can't serve its function of bringing that light and that goodness. Like we said this morning before we took out the Torah, like Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. From Zion goes out Torah, the word of God from Yerushalayim. That's how it's built. That's how this prism, this white light, so to speak, comes to the world, and then it's diffracted, different pieces, all over to give life to all the limbs. That we'll talk about more as we talk about the redemption process during the usual classes. But again, because of the proximity to the Yortzeit of Rav Kook, I wanted to mention a few things and what an example I'll give you of what he did of when we went into exile. Like I said, this fracturing, this unified picture, the holistic view of the nation, the national content of the Jewish people is now broken, and now we have individuals, like I said in Yechezkel 37, the dry bones, individuals, communities, trying to fight for their survival and maintain a spiritual existence. But now it's all fractured, broken, like the Gemara says in Brachot, page 8a. God's temple destroyed, the Jews in exile. God only has his 4 cubits of halakha. Judaism is now limited to the individual. The 4 cubits is like the private domain that you can walk on Shabbat, you have to carry. This is your private area. Judaism is now limited. God's name, this light, this blessing for the world is now limited to the kitchen, the Beit Midrash, the yeshiva. In other words, the private individual existence, each one its own communities maybe, but no national kingdom of priests and holy nation that show a holy empire, and which shows that all of life can be holy and is holy and will be meant to be lived and properly. Individuals can be holy. They can be very nice and moral, ethical. On a national level, it's much more difficult to show that even government, army, politics, you have enemies from within, from without. How to be holy, how to maintain holiness and justice and goodness and godliness in this world as a nation, that is the gift, the blessing, and the obligation of the Jewish people to bring that, to show, yes, all avenues of life can and will be sanctified and lived properly. But that doesn't exist outside the land of Israel, as we'll see the sources. We're now fractured into these pieces, so to speak, individuals. And all the concept of Torah became kind of individualistic. Even what we read in last week, in chapter 11 in Dvarim, what we read every day in Kriyat Shema, that you'll be kicked off the land. If you don't live properly, you'll be kicked off the land. And you should continue mezuzot and filin, whatever. It's right, continue doing the mitzvot. And the rabbis say there, Rashi brings it down, the Ramban, continue doing the mitzvot outside the land. Why? What do you mean, why? We do the mitzvot because we're commanded. No, the rabbis say, why? So they shouldn't be new to you when you come back to Eretz Yisrael. In other words, the main thing, call it the metaphysical, spiritual influence, is when they're done in the land of Israel. As it says over and over again in the book of Dvarim, we read also many times. These are the commandments and the statutes you should keep in the land, Ba'aretz, that you were crossing over. Moshe Rabbeinu over and over again in the book of Dvarim, we saw chapter 4, chapter 6, chapter 11, and chapter 12, over and over again. These are the laws and the statutes you should keep in the land. So outside the land, we don't have to keep them. We have to keep them. The Torah obligation to keep them, but what's the reason for the keeping them then? To observance is then, so they shouldn't be new to you when you come back. And know what the full significance, the full value, this universal blessing of energy that opens up faucets of divine good and blessing and uplifting positive vibrations, vibes to the world, positive energy. That's when the Jews in Eretz Yisrael living as a nation. Outside of which you have to do the mitzvot. But why, the rabbis say? So they shouldn't be new to you when you come back. Like a rehearsal. It's an obligatory rehearsal. It's not like a volunteer. We have to put on tefillin in New York, but it's not the same level. But that's, again, another topic. So all these things became, like we went from the nation and all the concept of Judaism became individualistic. Me and my mitzvot, my 4 cubits, and we'll see the tragedy of that. Also with no sacrifices, the rabbi said we have prayer instead of that. Different things that became like a little war, like soon we'll be reading about wars. When you go to war, laws of wars, unfortunately, we have to defend ourselves to keep that nation alive, to keep the heart alive for the good of the world. And all that didn't apply. We didn't have a nation, we didn't have an army, we didn't have a government. So those concepts were now converted to, say, translated to the individual. The war you have with your Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination. You have the inner battle of you and your good side, the bad side. In other words, all these concepts became now interrelated from the cloud, from the collective down to the personal individual. Rav Kook comes at this time when the Jewish people are now returning to their full grandeur, to be a nation again, to be alive as a vital nation living in the land, and with all the problems with that. When we're coming back, these two aspects that were separate, like I said, we're all divided. Have the religious side and the national side, the physical side, the spiritual and the physical, the body and the soul. Everything was like fractured into different pieces. And now we're coming back to the fullness of what Am Yisrael is supposed to be. Again, a kingdom free, a holy nation, but holy, a body with a soul, not just a soul, spirituality without a body. Now we're coming back to this full existence. So again, each one comes back with their, how do you say, individualistic, private understandings. Like it's an orchestra. Each one has a different instrument to play. Each one comes back playing their instrument, thinking that's the most important, that only this is important. You have nationalism, we're Jewish, we have just Shabbat and Kashrut. You got Shabbat? No, we have a nation, we want to be alive and full of vitality. And the truth is, nation of Israel is built by both. It says like the house of Israel, built by Rachel and Leah, by the Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, the physical and the spiritual, Goy Kadosh. A nation, yes, government, army, politics, and all that is the body that reveals and lives holiness. Not just to come back to be a soul, to become just spirituality, monks. That's not Judaism, to live as monks and to some cut off from this world. That's what we were, unfortunately. We didn't have government, army, politics, the reality of a nation. So we just had, like I said, Judaism, individual Judaism. And God sent this special soul that shows the way, enlightens the Torah concepts to return to the fullness. The people are coming back. Reality is now coming back. The Jews are being coming back to Israel. The secular think we just have to be like everyone else, another secular nation in the land. The religious think, no, only religion, only how to put this together, how to, what seemingly contradictory values and ideas, how to reveal the inner depth that there's really there's one ideal of this holy nation, the divine ideal that is now coming to expression through the individual branches, the individual parts. That takes a special vision to see the underlying unity, not just a ceasefire, that these what was seen as mutually exclusive, contradictory values, either this or that. So you say, no, you can live together. What we called in Israel, what they had in the early days, the Mishuva Yashan, Mishuva Chadash, the old camp, were the ones who came to Israel just to sit and learn Torah, to die here, to pray, and just to be buried here. And then you had this new camp of like I said, the pioneers, building the land, agriculture, government, sort of to start to form a government, to be a nation. And they were these two camps who were polarized, totally separate, like a mutually exclusive, nothing to do with each other. And Rav Kook comes in a sense to unify, but again, we'll see, not just to talk about it, but live this unity, this inner unity to reveal the underlying unity that transcends the individual parts and is revealed through them. We need both parts. You need to have a body and a soul. A soul can't be revealed in this world without a body. Individually and also collectively. The national soul is revealed through the Jewish body in the land of Israel. We'll see the sources in the Gemara, and the rabbis tell us that what we said also on Shabbat and Mincha. Summarize this idea, you could say. On Shabbat and Mincha, we say, Ata Achad, Shimcha Achad, Umika Amcha Yisrael, Goy Echad Ba'aretz. You are one that's transcending beyond, and your name is one. Your ideal, this one, like I call it, the white light, this good, this ideal that you have for creation, what the world is meant to be living as one manifestation of goodness through all the different parts. How is that revealed? Through the Goy Echad, through the nation that is one. There's a nation that is not another part. It's not just, I can give the example of the conductor of the different the instruments. Each one has their instrument, but the conductor has the whole music. He has to put it all together. But it's even more than that, because the conductor is still in the same plane, maybe a little bit higher, I don't know. But he's still in the same plane of the world. But the Am Yisrael is the Neshama. The rabbis say it's not from this world. It comes beyond this world, into this world, to raise this world beyond this world. The Archimedes point to change everything, to elevate all, to connect worldliness to godliness. Nevertheless, this function of unifying all, to reveal the inner underlying unity that, again, is revealed through all the different parts. They're not mutually exclusive. They're not separate parts. They're not only work together in harmony. A ceasefire. So we'll try to be together. That's all. It's at an advanced level. That they stop fighting and realizing, wait, I need you, need me. I need the drums and the violins, and together we make up beautiful music. But there's a higher level of this oneness, revealing the true Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The theme of Am Yisrael, the motif of God is one. The oneness of God. There's good. There's ideal. There's one. It's revealed through the multiplicity. In all the variety, there's a root. There's a source that is not just one, as opposed to there's not 10 gods, but there's one that's before them all, that created them all, that is above all, that is revealed in and through all those different parts, and all the parts are needed. And Rav Kook has this special soul, so to speak, that is this of unity. There's a rabbi that summarized Rav Kook, you could say, his teachings, whatever, in the word achdut, unity, of finding, of exposing and the underlying unity that is there, the divine, in other words, to see Hashem. See as Hashem, there's no physical seeing, but to see the unity, this one, your name is one, your ideal is one, to see the one in the multiplicity. And again, in practice, when it came down to like the two camps of Israel, the secular Zionists and the religious anti-Zionists, how to realize you're both needed, you both complement each other, you're both necessary parts of this oneness of godliness that requires, yes, both aspects. But how to live in peace, and not just live in peace, but again, how to recognize and expose this inner oneness. So Rav Kook, I guess simply, I'll just say that he returns these concepts that were now limited from the collective down to the private. He restores them to their, again, didn't make it up. He's from the Torah sources, to return us to the original full meaning, like the full-blown, the nation of Israel being a kingdom, a priest, and a holy nation, how to live and guide and direct all those different forces. And it's not easy, like I said, till this day. There's still this animosity or separation of different forces, each one thinking that I'm right, only I, and how to reveal that we're all branches, we're all limbs of one body. So that's part of what Rav Kook does, and he, like I said, he expands the concepts. Being the month of Elul, of Tshuva, so I wanted to take an example, or bring an example of how Rav Kook does this, to show you how a concept of tshuva, a simple concept, we all heard of it, we all know, now everyone talks about tshuva, and the month of Elul, before Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. But some people, the association of tshuva is with, I don't know, depression, sadness, maybe some people with joy, but limiting, pain, something you have to do before Rosh Hashanah. It's unfortunately has a negative, so to speak, associations, connotations. Because again, to remember all the bad things you did and you have to fix and how you're lacking and how you're missing, it's not pleasant. And Rav Kook will change the whole concept of tshuva into something that is so amazing, so, how do you say, enjoying, makes joy, happiness, and true the more we understand what it really is. So again, he takes this concept and exposes it in this bigger grandeur. So first, I want to start off with maybe with how the word is used in the Torah, word of tshuva. The root of tshuva is shuv, right? Tshuva, to return, which we'll see is very accurate. After the English is very good. Is there another Tanakh that starts with chapter 11? Is there another Chumash, maybe a Tanakh that starts from the beginning? Pages are missing here. I picked up the wrong one. In the chapter of, you can bring a whole Tanakh because I want a few other sources. In chapter 8, in Breshit, you all know the story of the ark, Noach and the ark. He sends out the raven. The raven goes and he sends out, what does he send out the second time?
Dove.
A dove. And in chapter 8, verse He sent out the dove for him to see whether the waters had subsided, but the dove could not find a resting place for the sole of its foot, and it returned to him to the ark. So here the word is Vatashov elav el teva. The dove, again, like in simple English, returned to the teva. Here it means returning in place. It was in the ark, was sent out, and had no place to rest, and returned. So returning means to come back to the place from which you left. Also, when Yaakov left Eretz Yisrael, and he says, the oath, and he says he wants to make sure he comes back. He says, I will return to my father's house. I'm now leaving Eretz Yisrael, but I want to return. Again, return, simple, in place. Also, the book of Yirmiyahu, the famous prophecy that Jews will come back to the land, chapter 31 of Rishavu Banim Ligvulam, right? The children will return. Rishavu, they'll return to their place. But there's also another context, another usage of the word. In the book of Lachim, Kings 2, there's a story about Naaman. Naaman, and we heard of Naaman, he was the Ramatkal. What's a Ramatkal? What? Okay, what's a Ramatkal?
Head of the army.
The head of the army, right? What's it called? Anyway, the head of the army. Chapter 5. In Kings 2. Naaman, I'll read in English. The commander of the army of the king of Aram was an eminent man before his master, well honored, for through him Hashem had granted victory to Aram. He was a great warrior, but he became a leper, as you said. What they did was they had raiding parties to go and to raid Israel. And once they captured a young girl from the land of Israel, and she was serving before Naaman. They took her to be a mistress for his wife, to be a maid in the house. So she saw that all of a sudden this head of the army, the husband of her mistress, has a leper. She said to her mistress, my master's prayer should be brought before the prophet who is in Shemar. Yes, there's a prophet in Shomron. We Jews have a prophet that can heal you. Heal your husband. He will heal him from his leprosy. So Naaman went and told his master, the king, such and such spoke the girl who was from the land of Israel. The king of Aram said, okay, I'll send a letter to the king of Israel. I'm sending you Aram, my Naaman. He took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold. Again, he sent him a nice present, and he says, now, heal him. I heard this girl says in Israel, you Jews have a healer, this prophet in the Shomron. I sent Naaman to you that you should heal him from his leprosy. The king hears this. He's rent his clothes. What's going to be? I'm like, who am I? He says, I can take and give life. What does he think I am? How can I? He says, he's just using this maybe as an alibi just to come attack me. I can't do all this thing. You can't help him. He seeks a pretext against me, said the king of Israel. Elisha, the prophet, the man of God, heard that the king had rent his garments, and he said to him, why did you rent your garments? Let him come to me now, and he shall realize that there's a prophet in Israel. Let them know, yes, let them see that, yes, Navi B'Israel, there's prophets in Israel, with powers that are not from this world that we're used to. Connection to God that we're returning to, hopefully soon, in this process of redemption that we're in. Naaman came with his horses and chariot and stood at the entrance of Elisha's house. He said, okay. He tells him, go and bathe 7 times in the Jordan. How do you think he reacts to that? Naaman, this leper. He told the prophet, tells his messenger to tell the king, Naaman, go and dip in the Jordan 7 times. And your flesh will become normal again and you will be cleansed. Naaman was enraged and left. Why was he enraged? Behold, I said to myself, I thought he would come out to me and stand and call the name of God, give me something eye of newt, take a thing of cat's tails, jump up and down 720 times, do something, weird, something mystical. To go dip in the Jordan, he goes, what do I have that? I have Amanah, Parpar, the rivers of Damascus are better than all the waters of Israel. Do I not always bathe in them? Have I become cleansed? He turned away and went in fury. I was expecting something. The prophet of Israel comes, some mystical, mantra. What do you call it? What abracadabra? He just tells me to dip. I have rivers in Damascus. His servant said, "Look, if he told you something big to do, difficult, you would do it, right? So all the more so, he told you just to go down and dip in the river. What do you have to lose?" So he went down and dipped himself in the river 7 times. And my point that we're trying to get to here, in verse 13, chapter 5:13, it says, verse 14, in Hebrew, he went down and dipped. Vayashov b'saro k'b'sar. Now his skin, his flesh returned like the flesh of a young child, and he was pure. Here the word of to return is not returning in place, but rather to the status, situation. You were healthy, became a leper, and now returning. So in English, I get it's a very accurate thing. To return to where you were, either physically, in place, geographically, to the place from which you came, or to the situation from which you came. Accordingly, I want to now say that if this is the meaning of tshuva, to return to a place that you left, I want to give now, again, I don't forget the answer, but I want to propose hypothetical, incorrect, hopefully we'll see, but hypothetical conclusions. If that's what tshuva is, to return to from where you were, then tshuva is only after sin. Someone sins, he was here, he sinned, and he has to return to where he was. Someone who never sinned, if someone theoretically, let's say, never sins, there's no tshuva. He can get holier. There's other words, litkadesh, litromem, to rise up, to elevate, to advance, but it's not tshuva. Tshuva means to go from here and then to return. If you never leave here, you can go higher. But how can you do tshuva? Seemingly then, tshuva is only after sin. And like I said, that goes to all the connotations of sinning. You have to remember your sins, and you did this, and you ate a cheeseburger, I don't know, different things, and you have to, I did this, and I did that. And so then it's only after sin. Then it's also, it's only for man who has free will. There's no sin if there's no choice. If you didn't choose anything, it's not a sin. You live a certain way, the animals live a certain way, they do that's their life level. The sin is someone that has a choice to choose between good and bad, and he chooses the wrong thing. So then there's sin. But if there's no free will, there's no choice. In other words, only by man is that power of free will in this highest level. So only by man is there applies tshuva. And also maybe even more, it's only a religious man. Someone who was religious fell, did a sin, and now he has to come back to what he was before. But someone who wasn't religious, again, he's becoming religious. He's now about tshuva, takes upon himself the commandments to fulfill, to get closer to Hashem. He's rising, but he's not tshuva. He wasn't there. He wasn't in yeshiva. Now he's left his previous life, and now he's in yeshiva. And now he's learning and eating kosher food. Also, the tshuva is only something circumstantial, by chance. Perchance, if you happen to sin, then do tshuva. It's not part of the mainstream of life. It's not part of the day-to-day. There's a road you're on. If you fall off, then go back. But the main essence of life is to be on the road and continue properly and not to fall. But if you fall, there's a way to return. All these things I'm saying because we'll see how they're not the full picture of tshuva. But this is what would come out of the, so to speak, conclusions. If tshuva is returning, so again, it's returning from something you fail and you go back. But it's not a positive thing. It's not a thing of everyday life. Also, if we divide the commandments into the rabbis, the commandments into 3 different levels. There are obligatory commandments, compulsory, like what do we have to do? That you have to put yourself in a situation to do. Like putting on tefillin, eating kazayit matzah, eating a kazayit in the sukkah, the first night. There's also voluntary mitzvot, optional. Maybe I call them optional. That if you build a house, soon we'll be reading it next week in the parsha after Kittitzei, I believe. If you build a house and you want to go up on the roof, what do you have to do?
To build like the whole house, like leave a portion Build a
When you
fence.
go on the roof, right? You have to build a ma'akeh, a parapet, what's it called? A fence on the roof. You don't have to go up on the roof. You can build a house with a roof like whatever. But if you want to go up on the roof, you want this, you have to build a fence. Also, if someone sees a bird, an egg, whatever, the shiloh hakein, the mother on the bird, send away the mother. It's not an obligation to go do it. You don't have to do it every day, every week. There are those that absolutely search out to find that mitzvah. It's not so simple to do properly with all the conditions. But nevertheless, that's an optional mitzvah. If it mizdamen lacha, if it's opportunes, the opportunity comes, then you fulfill the mitzvah. There's another category, also coming up in the Torah, of yeshivat hagzela. Actually, it's Vayikra, but also to return the stolen article. If, God forbid, someone steals something, there's a mitzvah you fulfill by returning it. You shouldn't have done it in the first place. But if you did, when you return it, you fulfill this mitzvah, heshiv. You return the gzela, the stolen article. That's a mitzvah that it's better not to get to, not to need. In other words, don't steal, and you won't have this mitzvah of returning. Nachon. It's better not also right to divorce. There's certain laws of divorce that they give a certain way of writing the writ of divorce, get. That's a mitzvah. When it's written a certain way, that's a mitzvah, but there's no mitzvah. In other words, not something you should obligatory to do, God forbid, and not even optional that you should try to look for, whatever. It's a negative commandment, so to speak. Negative meaning something you should never have to do. But if you do it, there's a law and a certain fulfillment that is done when you do so. Accordingly, where would you put the mitzvah of tshuva in those three categories? Obligatory, optional, or better you never need it? Tshuva. If tshuva comes after sin, so it's better, better you never sin. Mm-hmm. Don't sin, then you won't need tshuva. Again, it's like it says, there's no one that ever doesn't sin, let's say, theoretically. But it's something that you shouldn't, it's one of the third category you should never have to meet up with. You should try to avoid it or minimize the need for it. Don't sin, you won't need tshuva. So I want to show you that all those conclusions are not complete, not correct, so to speak. Just quickly, again, I passed out the sheet with a few quotes from this book, Orot HaTshuva of Rav Kook. By the way, when I mentioned Rav Kook, it's so hard. He didn't just, again, besides like knowing the Torah and by heart, the rabbis testified doing the Zohar by heart and this and all the halakha, the Rambam. It's not just his greatness of Torah that he can quote and cite, and even halachic decisions and quote and bring different sources together and amazing the wisdom. But he reached the point, what it says in Pirkei Avot, of Mayana Mitgaber. What's Mayana Mitgaber? Mayan is a spring. It's this overflowing spring. It's no longer like external wisdom of being able to, again, from your memory, pulling certain sources. You become a personality of Torah. It flows. It's what you think, what you write. It's Torah. It's this person, this neshama of Torah that just what you. His writings, Rav Kook didn't write them many books. What he did write was, you can call them yomanim, diary. A diary, you people write. I went to Spain on Tuesday. I went to Poland on Wednesday, whatever. They write what they did, what they saw, whatever. Rav Kook's diaries, quote unquote, not diaries, but his writings, outpourings, literally neshama, the outpourings of neshama, the writings of Torah wisdom, of thought, of ideas, of elevated concepts, of the world's perfection, elevating how, all based on Torah. He said, there's nothing I wrote that I said it doesn't have its soul from the Arizal, but it's such a new language, the beauty. Hopefully we'll see a little bit. It's just so profound and this was like outpour, just writing. There were no rough drafts. It was just like, we have them where I had the privilege to work on. I just sent to print 2 days ago, one of what's called Pinkas 5, again, not diary. Pinkas is like a notebook number 5. Most of the writings of books we have of Rav Kook were culled from these volumes. He used to take these, some of them were little notebooks. In Switzerland, he had these giant, called kvatzim. It's like a big hardcover and paper, I don't know how you call it, hardbound, just empty pages. He would write unbelievable things. From those things, his son, Rabbi Yehuda Kook, pulled out the topics and whatever, made what we call the books of Rav Kook Orot, the lights of Torah, the lights of Tshuva. Actually, not actually. Orot to Tshuva, the lights of Tshuva, actually Rav Kook started to write it. The first 3 chapters he wrote as a book. The rest, his son, like I said, culled from all the things of Tshuva that he wrote in all these Pinkasim, and then the Orot HaKodesh was culled from these 8 kvatzim, these 8 big things, 8 big volumes also. We have the honor, whatever, to hold them, to see them. It was amazing. Just with no fixings. It's just like this outpouring, the neshama, but such wisdom, and the wording and everything's so exact. It's how can you do that like rough draft? Other writers, I think Bialik, how can you write this? You have to think about each word and write a poem, write a song, write a prose. It was just this neshama. You see, it's. I said like just recently we're putting out another volume. All of his writings, even after this 90 years, haven't been printed yet. A lot of his writings. It's just so much, and it wasn't just like sitting in, just pouring out sick all day. He was the rabbi, chief rabbi, with all the problems here, and the Stavsky affair, right? When Arlozorov was killed, murdered, they blamed Stavsky, and he said he was innocent. All the political things with the English and the Kotel, doing so many things. Halachic, he has volumes of halachic, how do you say, psakim, halachic decisions. He wasn't like had it just full time. He's just sitting and writing. How he did it all, it's just it's a special neshama that was sent to like this outpourings. So again, this is from the first 3 chapters in Orot Tshuva. Is actually he wrote in order. Actually, part of the Sidur, the commentary on the Sidur, he wrote the beginning, but only on the beginning, and the rest again, his son Rav Yehuda put together from these notebooks. What we have here in front of you is a few quotes from a few of the paragraphs. Even that is like a line or 2 from these paragraphs from Orot Tshuva. Each source I wrote down where it's from. Today we'll just start with the first one, maybe just to see what we're talking about. Each one needs explanation. It's a study. There was someone that wrote the whole thing that each paragraph is like a book of psychology, a book of the workings of the nefesh, the soul, the inner meaning, the confined to the consciousness in a way. But it includes so much. It's so. But here, just in the context, I want to show of these, so to speak, temporary hypothetical conclusions that we got. If tshuva means to return from where you want, again, tshuva is from after sin and after you think about it, remember what you did. Here, all of a sudden, we'll expand the tshuva. The first paragraph. In the depths of life beams every moment this new light of tshuva, the loftier tshuva. There's a loftier tshuva apparently, but not only that, but it's every moment. We said it's a one-time act. If you, God forbid, should do something wrong, okay, go back. It's not a constant thing. It's not part of the mainstream of life. We said the main road of life is Torah, mitzvah, living a normal life. If you fall off the road, go back to the road. But here it says every moment. Also the next paragraph from chapter 6. Tshuva is constantly in the heart. Maybe I'll do 2 more quickly. Again, each one needs explanation. I usually do, but maybe we'll just do it quicker. In chapter 5, and the third source on the right, the world is not, the world has to ultimately come to complete tshuva. The world is not something that stays in one place, one situation. The world is not static. The world develops, the world is growing, the world is progressing. And the true progression, the true evolution will certainly bring it to the full health, both physical and spiritual. Now, the world is, first of all, he says the world, not just man who sins could do tshuva. The world, what is it? The world doesn't do tshuva. What does it mean here? That the world will do tshuva. How does the world do tshuva? And here it also says that the world develops. Okay, the world is going, rising, okay, maybe evolving to more perfection. That's good, but that's not tshuva. Tshuva means to return. You can go higher. We said you can go higher. There's other words and adjectives to describe elevation, advance, and growing. But it's not tshuva. It doesn't fit the word tshuva. We have to understand how this is returning. So the world, he says, is like this dynamic historical process of world development from the past through the present to a more perfect, elevated future. And then the next paragraph, he says, Ruach HaTshuva, the spirit of tshuva is what hovers in the world, and that is what gives it ikar tivyono tififat hitpatkuto, and that is what gives its its basic character and form, and the impetus to develop. In other words, tshuva is this force in the world, a cosmic force that is pushing the world towards perfection. Well, there's entropy that it goes to like less energy. So there's a force of tshuva that is pushing the world like a child grows. He's from birth. It's this force that is ingrown in whatever in the world that pushes him to develop in a certain direction of getting bigger, physically and also spiritually better. So too, in the world there is this force that's called the ruach of tshuva that is pushing the world towards completion, towards perfection, towards elevation. Like I said, from the past, the present, to a more perfect, elevated future. Okay, that's good, but how is that tshuva? Again, that will leave for next week. How is that returning? Rising, yes, and there's a force that's amazing. There's something behind history in the world that is pushing the world to develop, to grow, to get more perfected, morally, mainly, the main perfection of mankind, to make man a moral chunk of goodness, not a jealousy and hatred, what we live in wars, etc. To change man, to revolutionize man and mankind and the orientation of man, the aspirations of man, to make a new man, to make him what he's supposed to be, what he's normal, as opposed to what it is now of hatred and jealousy and fighting, of getting to the more perfected, the elevated status of the knowledge of God, like it says in the prophet Yeshayahu. The knowledge of God will fill the earth, and everyone will be living. The lamb will live with the wolf with the lamb. Even the animal kingdom, they're living in this new level of normalcy, of living as one. Why fighting each other? We're different. Again, we said the differences don't mean separation. Differences that each one complements each other to complete this beautiful symphony of the world. But again, how is this tshuva? That's very nice. That's an ideal. The world is going towards perfection. If we look at history, we can see maybe a few examples of how what used to be glorified war, now there's the UN at least to talk about, of try to avoid war. Anyway, lo chashuv, but mankind and we see how the world has developed over the last 2,000 years and how Am Yisrael has been part of a driving force in that. But again, how is that tshuva? How is that returning? That's going from here and going up. Tshuva, we said, is not going from zero to up. It's going from here and then falling and then returning again. So that we'll do again next week. Either keep the sheets or pass them back, and then we'll see how Rav Kook changes the whole concept of tshuva. As I said, it's not limited to man and his sin. It's a world process towards perfection. So we have to understand how the root, how it's indeed tshuva. What is it returning to? B'ezrat Hashem. Chodesh Tov.